The air screamed, a metallic shriek that tore through the shattered landscape. Dust and debris, stained crimson by the setting sun, rained down on the collapsed skyscrapers of what was once downtown Metropolis. Lieutenant Eva Rostova pressed her ear against the comms unit, the static crackling like an open wound. Her squad, what little remained of them, huddled behind the skeletal remains of a fortified armored personnel carrier, their faces etched with a fear that went beyond exhaustion. Status report. Alpha 6. A voice, strained but resolute, cut through the comms. It was Commissioner Gordon, his usual calm replaced by a raw edge. What do you see? Eva risked a glance over the APC's mangled plating. The sight made her stomach clench. In the epicenter of the destruction, a monstrous green figure stood silhouetted against the burning skyline. It was easily 20 feet tall, its muscles like twisted cables, rippling with unimaginable power. Steam hissed from its nostrils. Around it, the very ground seemed to vibrate. This wasn't a meta-human they had trained for. This wasn't even a full-scale alien invasion in the way they understood it. This was something else. Sir, Ava reported, her voice steadier than she felt. The asset, it's still active. No discernible patterns. It just smashes. The containment fields failed, all of them. Projectiles bounce off it like pebbles. Casualties are catastrophic. Her gaze swept over the ruined city block. The crater where the Daily Planet building had once stood. Now just a smoking pit. It's not slowing down. Any sign of Superman Justice League? Gordon's voice was clipped, a desperate plea hidden beneath the professionalism. Eva swallowed hard. Negative, sir. The impact point for the dimensional anomaly seems to have severed conventional communication. We've got nothing. It's just us. A low growl rumbled from the green behemoth, a sound that vibrated through the very bones of the city. It spun, its massive head snapping towards a remaining structure, a half-collapsed financial tower. With a roar that ripped the air, it launched itself forward, a blur of green fury. The building groaned, then disintegrated into a cloud of concrete and twisted rebar. Ava pulled her head back, grit stinging her eyes. "We can't engage, sir," she stated, the bitter truth cold on her tongue. "We can't even get close. Orders?" Gordon's silence was heavier than any explosion. Then, a sigh, filled with the weight of a city's impending doom. "Evacuate. Tactical retreat, Lieutenant. Get your people out. Try to establish a perimeter, but do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. Prioritize civilian safety." "Understood," Eva replied, though the order felt like surrender. She clicked off the comm, turning to her remaining squad. Their eyes were wide, fixed on her, waiting. "All right, listen up," she yelled over the distant thudding of destruction. "New orders. Tactical retreat. We pull back, establish a defensive perimeter 2 clicks east. Focus on civilian extraction. Move! And keep your heads down!" The squad didn't hesitate, scrambling from their meager cover. They knew what they were up against. They'd seen it. There was no hero coming this time. Just them, and the green monster that tore reality apart. The retreat was a staggered, desperate affair. Abandoned vehicles, overturned and burning, littered the choked streets. The air grew thick with acrid smoke and the scent of pulverized stone. Ava, her carbine gripped tightly, moved with a practiced fluidity, scanning every shadow. The roar of the creature seemed to follow them, a primal pulse of destruction that rattled their teeth. They picked their way through the ruins, a ghost squad in a ghost city. "Lieutenant," Sergeant Miller shouted, pointing a gloved hand towards a partially collapsed underground parking garage entrance. "Civilians. Looks like 30, maybe more, trapped in there," Ava swore under her breath. Gordon's orders were clear: prioritize civilian safety. But getting them out of here with that stalking the ruins was a death sentence. The entrance was unstable, debris still showering down from above. "All right, Miller. You and Rodriguez create an entry point. Johnson, Ramirez, cover them. I'll provide overwatch. Move fast!" Miller, a burly man with a grim set to his jaw, nodded. He and Rodriguez, a wiry demolitions expert, moved towards the rubble. They began to pry at a heavy concrete slab, the metallic screeches of grinding rock echoing in the desolate street. Ava kept her eyes peeled, her carbine pointed towards the main street. The ground vibrated steadily now, a low hum that grew louder. The monster was moving their way. "We've got to move faster," she muttered, checking her ammunition count. She glanced at the garage entrance. The opening was still too small. The rumble intensified. It was getting closer. "Almost there, Lieutenant." Miller grunted, straining against a rebar. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. Not the monsters, but something fast, dark and utterly silent. Ava's head snapped up. A figure, cape billowing, moved with impossible speed above the rooftops, a blur of black against the smoke-choked sky. He landed silently on a nearby ledge, a gargoyle come to life. Batman. Relief, sharp and sudden, almost buckled Eva's knees, but it was quickly replaced by a fresh wave of dread. Even he seemed to hesitate, his gaze fixed not on them, but on the epicenter of destruction. He was here, yes, but for how long? And what could even he do against a force of nature? Batman's voice, a low growl that somehow cut through the cacophony, reached them. Who is that thing? What is it? Ava didn't have to look at him to know his attention was split. His legendary focus was momentarily shattered by the sheer impossibility of the situation. "We don't know, sir," she replied, her voice strained. A dimensional anomaly. "No ID. Pure destructive force. It's coming," Rodriguez gasped, finally creating an opening in the rubble, revealing terrified faces inside. The ground shuddered violently. A block away, a multi-story building groaned, then exploded outwards. The monster. "It was almost on them! Batman!" Eva shouted, a desperate gamble. "We have civilians trapped. We need cover!" He didn't acknowledge her directly. His gaze was locked on the approaching green terror. "Miller, get those people out. Lieutenant, fall back once they're clear. I'll draw its attention." Ava's breath hitched. Draw its attention? He was going to confront that thing head-on? She watched him, a solitary figure against the end of the world. He launched himself off the ledge, a dark projectile streaking towards the green behemoth. It was a suicide mission, she knew, but it bought them precious seconds. "All right, Miller." "Go, go, go!" Eva yelled, laying down suppressing fire on the street, though she knew it was futile. The monster roared, a sound of pure rage, as Batman engaged it. The impossible factor had arrived. Batman moved like a shadow, a whisper of a threat. He didn't engage the creature directly, not at first. He darted around its massive form, a dark moth around a raging green bonfire. His batarangs, usually precise and impactful, merely clinked off its impenetrable skin like discarded toys. The creature, the Hulk as some frantic reports had labeled it, roared in frustration, its blows shattering the very street, sending geysers of concrete and asphalt into the air. Eva watched, adrenaline pumping as her squad pulled terrified civilians from the ruined garage. Children, women, the elderly, their faces streaked with soot and tears. This was why they fought. This was why Batman was a legend. He was buying them time, but for how long? "Move them out!" Ava screamed, guiding a huddle of civilians, pushing them towards the designated retreat route. "Keep them moving! Don't look back!" A massive fist slammed into the ground where Batman had been a split second before, creating a crater large enough to swallow a truck. The shockwave knocked Eva off her feet. Her ears rang. When she looked up, Batman was already back in motion, grappling onto a higher building, then swinging back towards the Hulk, a dark silhouette against the monstrous green. He was drawing its focus, but he was also taking unimaginable risks. "This thing, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Miller gasped, limping slightly, a child cradled in his arms. He deposited the child with an EMT drone, then returned, grabbing another civilian. "It just keeps coming." Eva nodded, her eyes fixed on the impossible battle. Batman deployed a sonic device, a high-frequency pulse meant to disorient. The Hulk merely blinked, then swatted at the air, crushing the device like a bug. Its roar intensified, a sound of growing fury. It was learning, adapting. It wasn't just a mindless beast. It was a force of pure, untamed rage, and it was getting angrier. "We have to clear this area," Eva said, her voice strained. "Now! It's escalating." The Hulk, its attention fully on Batman now, launched itself into the air. A green missile. It smashed through a nearby skyscraper, turning its upper floors into a dust cloud. Batman, using a well-timed explosive charge, disengaged from the creature for a moment, creating a diversion. He needed to get away, to regroup. Even Batman had limits, but the Hulk didn't seem to. Its healing factor, its sheer resilience, seemed boundless. Eva saw a flash of movement, a dark figure leaping from a collapsing floor, narrowly avoiding a massive, debris-filled swipe from the Hulk. Batman was retreating. Good, they all needed to. "All right, everyone," Ava yelled, pushing the last of the civilians forward. "Fall back to the rendezvous point. Now, no stragglers!" The squad, now a depleted unit, formed a protective barrier around the fleeing civilians. Ava took point, her carbine sweeping the ruined streets. The roar of the Hulk was behind them, constant, deafening. They were running, yes, but they weren't safe. Not yet. Not while that thing still walked. As they rounded a corner, A blinding green energy blast erupted from the heart of the city, tearing into the clouds above. The sky itself seemed to buckle. What was that? Was the Hulk powering up, or was something else happening? The impossible factor had just gotten impossibly more terrifying. The green energy blast tore through the skyline like a cosmic lightning bolt, illuminating the chaos with an unnatural, sickly glow. It wasn't the Hulk, it was something else. Another variable, another impossible factor added to a situation already beyond comprehension. Eva and her squad, along with the terrified civilians, stumbled to a halt, their eyes wide with disbelief and horror. "What in the?" Miller gasped, his voice a ragged whisper. Eva couldn't articulate the fear coiling in her gut. That blast wasn't destructive in the physical sense. It was transfiguring. Where it struck the atmosphere, the sky itself seemed to rip, shimmering with impossible colors. A portal? A gateway? "Keep moving!" Eva barked, forcing her fear down. "We don't know what that was, but we don't want to be here when it happens again." They pushed forward, a desperate herd navigating a nightmare. The ground continued to rumble, the rhythmic thudding of the Hulk's rampage, a constant bass note to their terror. But now, another sound joined it. A high-pitched, almost crystalline hum, growing in intensity. The energy blast had not been an isolated incident. They reached the designated fallback perimeter, a hastily established cordon guarded by scattered GCPD units and National Guard troops, their faces ashen, their weapons pointed uselessly at the shattered city. The hum was deafening here, vibrating through the very ground. Above them, in the impossibly torn sky, something was coalescing. "Report!" a grizzled National Guard captain yelled, his voice barely audible over the hum. "What is that thing in there?" "Pure destructive force, Captain," Eva shouted back, her throat raw. "And now that." She pointed a shaking finger at the sky. The shimmering rift in the sky solidified, twisting and expanding. Out of it, figures began to descend. Not one or two, but dozens, then hundreds, clad in sleek metallic armor, their movements precise and alien. They weren't flying, they were falling, with purpose, their jets firing at the last second to cushion their landings. They carried advanced energy weapons, their forms menacing, inhuman. "Hostiles!" a guard shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the sudden eruption of alien weaponry. Energy bolts, sharp and brilliant, tore through the air, impacting police cruisers and military vehicles with devastating accuracy. The defensive perimeter, thin and unprepared, was immediately shattered. Eva's mind raced. An alien invasion, now? On top of the Hulk? It was a sick joke, a multi-layered apocalypse. She looked back at the ruined city, where the Hulk was still rampaging, unaware or uncaring of the new arrivals. "Open fire!" the captain bellowed, his men responding with a volley of automatic weapon fire. But the alien armor seemed to shrug off bullets. The invaders were faster, stronger, and utterly merciless. "Miller, form up! Protect the civilians!" Eva ordered, her carbine spitting fire. She targeted the weakest points of the alien armor, the joints, the visors. She managed to drop one, then another, but it was like trying to empty an ocean with a teacup. The aliens advanced, their energy weapons carving through the defensive line. Panic began to set in among the civilians, a chaotic wave that threatened to overwhelm them. Eva knew they couldn't hold. Not against this. Not against that. A sudden, earth-shattering roar echoed from the city. The Hulk. It had finally noticed the new arrivals. The ground vibrated with its approach, a primal force of nature clashing with advanced alien technology. The impossible had just gotten a whole lot worse. Eva clenched her jaw, her gaze fixed on the approaching storm. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was a war. The collision was cataclysmic. The Hulk, a green blur of pure rage, slammed into the vanguard of the alien invasion force. The invaders, sleek and technologically superior, were caught entirely off guard. Their disciplined formation broke as the monstrous figure ripped through their ranks, tearing apart armored soldiers like paper dolls. The energy hum of their weapons was drowned out by the guttural roars of the Hulk and the rending of metal. Eva watched, a morbid fascination momentarily replacing her terror. The Hulk, an unstoppable engine of destruction, was fighting the aliens, an enemy of their enemy, but it was still an uncontrolled, unpredictable force. "Hold your fire," Eva screamed at a panicking guard who was about to open fire on the melee. "Let them engage each other. Focus on getting civilians out." The new aliens, who Eva would later learn were known as the Chitauri, recovered quickly from their initial shock. Their commanders, hovering high above in sleek aerial craft, barked orders in a guttural language. The Chitauri adapted, forming new attack patterns, targeting the Hulk with concentrated energy blasts. These blasts, unlike the mundane projectiles of Earth forces, actually seemed to stagger the behemoth momentarily, but only momentarily. The Hulk roared, shaking off the effects, and lunged. It swatted aside an aerial craft, sending it spiraling into a nearby building. Then, it grabbed two Chitauri soldiers, smashing them together like cymbals. This wasn't strategy. This was pure, unadulterated fury. Miller, Ramirez, get those people through the underpass, Ava yelled, pointing to a subway tunnel entrance that offered a temporary sanctuary. We'll cover the rear. The remaining members of her squad moved with desperate efficiency, urging the terrified civilians into the relative safety of the underground. Ava, alongside a handful of National Guard troops, laid down covering fire, aiming at the Chitauri soldiers who tried to bypass the Hulk and attack the fleeing humans. The Chitauri, however, were proving to be formidable. Their numbers seemed endless, pouring from the rift in the sky. Their weapons, now directed at human targets, were devastating. An energy blast struck a nearby police barricade, vaporizing it instantly. The air filled with screams. Suddenly, a dark projectile streaked past Eva, impacting a Chitauri commander who was directing troops towards the underpass. The alien stumbled, its armor sparking. Batman. He was back. He landed beside Eva, his movements silent even amidst the chaos. They're organized, he stated, his voice a low rumble. Highly advanced. And that thing. He gestured towards the Hulk, currently tearing a Chitauri Leviathan in half. It's a weapon, uncontrolled. We need a way to stop them both, Eva said, reloading her carbine with trembling hands. They're tearing the city apart. Focus on the Chitauri portal, Batman replied, his gaze already scanning the swirling vortex in the sky. Cut off the head of the snake. The green one, it's a distraction, or a deterrent, depending on how you look at it. The ground vibrated again, not from the Hulk this time, but from the arrival of larger Chitauri forces. Giant, armored creatures, bristling with weaponry, descended from the portal, their shadows falling over them like harbingers of doom. The situation had just escalated beyond a desperate fight for survival. It was now a race against annihilation. Ava knew then, this night would decide the fate of Metropolis, and perhaps the world. The Chitauri reinforcements were monstrous. Leviathan-class beasts, segmented and armored, that crawled from the sky portal like living siege engines. They unleashed torrents of energy fire, tearing massive gouges in the remaining buildings and decimating the already broken defenses. The very air thrummed with the power of their destructive arrival. The Hulk, for a moment, seemed to hesitate, its roar replaced by a growl of challenge. Those things are going to level the city, Miller shouted, emerging from the underpass, having secured the last of the civilians. He looked up at the monstrous flying creatures, his face pale. Batman, ever pragmatic, ignored the new scale of the threat, his attention fixed on the shimmering portal high above. They're deploying a command structure, he observed, pointing to a larger, more ornate Chitauri craft that was now emerging, its hull glowing with intricate alien symbols. That's their target. Disrupt the portal, cut off their supply line. Eva understood the logic. Starve the beast, but how? They were pinned down, outnumbered, outgunned, and still dealing with a raging green behemoth that was now tearing into one of the smaller Leviathans, making short work of its armored hide. We don't have anything that can reach that high, Eva said, gesturing to the sky. Our air support is non-existent. Comms are still jammed. Batman turned to her, his cowl obscuring his expression, but his voice was unwavering. We improvise. Their command craft will be directing the flow of soldiers and the portal's stability. If we can get a concentrated explosive charge onto that vessel, we might collapse the gateway. A nearby energy blast vaporized a police car, sending shrapnel whistling past their heads. The Chitauri were closing in, their energy weapons singing their deadly tune. The Hulk was doing what it did best, disrupting their formations. But it was just one entity against an entire invasion force. It was a chaotic, bloody ballet of destruction. How do we get a charge up there? Miller asked, reloading his carbine with a grim determination. Batman's gaze swept over the shattered landscape, then landed on a half-collapsed but still structurally sound tower, its spire reaching precariously towards the sky. Lieutenant, what's your best shot at getting a team into that building? It might give us the elevation we need. Eva looked at the tower. It was a death trap, riddled with debris, its internal systems likely fried. but it was their only chance. Miller, Rodriguez, you're with me. Johnson, Ramirez, keep eyes on the approach, secure our flank. We need to move fast. Those Chitauri won't wait. Understood, sir, Miller replied, already moving, his determination stark in his eyes. I'll draw their heavy fire, Batman stated, launching a grappling hook towards a different building, seemingly disappearing into the chaos. You have 30 minutes. After that, assume all bets are off. 30 minutes. To scale a crumbling skyscraper, plant an explosive, and somehow escape. All while an alien army swarmed the city and an uncontrollable monster rampaged below. Ava felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. But she knew hesitation meant defeat. This was it, their desperate gamble. All right, squad, Eva yelled, her voice cutting through the din. Let's move. This is our city. We take it back. She led the charge towards the ruined tower, the fate of Metropolis resting on their impossible mission. The countdown had begun. The ascent of the crumbling skyscraper was a nightmare of twisted steel and unstable concrete. Each step was a gamble. Dust and acrid smoke choked the air, and the constant tremors from the battle below threatened to shake the entire structure down around them. Eva led the way, her senses heightened, every muscle screaming with exertion. Miller and Rodriguez, though heavily armored, followed close behind, their breathing ragged. Upper floors are compromised, Rodriguez rasped into his comm, testing a rebar ladder that groaned under his weight. Structural integrity is questionable. We don't have questionable time, Rodriguez, Eva replied, pulling herself onto a higher platform, shards of glass crunching under her boots. Find a path, any path. Below, the battle raged with an infernal intensity. The Hulk was a green whirlwind, now engaged in a brutal melee with the larger Chitauri Leviathans, tearing into them with primal force. Energy blasts crisscrossed the sky, some dangerously close to their precarious perch. Batman, a distant flickering shadow, continued his impossible task of drawing heavy Chitauri fire, weaving through the destruction with supernatural grace. Lieutenant, Miller called out, pointing to a gaping hole in the outer wall. Looks like a clear shot from the 30th floor, but it's exposed. Eva peered through the opening. It was perfect. Direct line of sight to the Chitauri command vessel, which hovered menacingly by the portal, its alien symbols pulsing with an ominous light. But Miller was right. Exposed meant vulnerable, very vulnerable. All right, Eva said, her voice grim. Rodriguez, prep the charges. Miller, cover us. We go in fast, plant the explosives, and get out. We don't linger. Rodriguez began to unpack the satchel charges, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. They were standard issue C4, designed for structural demolition. Whether they would be enough to collapse an alien command vessel, let alone a dimensional portal, was a terrifying unknown, but it was all they had. As Rodriguez armed the charges, a sudden piercing shriek tore through the air. A smaller, faster Chitauri craft, a scout ship, broke from the main formation. It had detected them. Its energy cannons swiveled, locking onto their position. Incoming! Miller yelled, raising his carbine, firing a desperate volley. The bullets sparked harmlessly off the alien craft's hull. Eva dove, pulling Rodriguez with her, just as a concentrated energy beam slammed into their position. The concrete exploded, sending them sprawling. Miller, caught in the blast, was thrown against a wall, his helmet cracking. Miller, status! Eva shouted, scrambling back to her feet. Carbine up. I'm good, Lieutenant, Miller grunted, shaking his head, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He staggered to his feet, still holding his weapon. Just a scratch. The scout ship banked, preparing for another pass. They were trapped, exposed, with no cover on this floor. The chargers were armed, but they couldn't even get a clean shot. Their 30 minutes were rapidly running out. This was the peak of the conflict, and they were caught in the crosshairs. Rodriguez, give me the charges, Eva commanded, a desperate plan forming in her mind. Miller, suppress that scout ship. Give me everything you've got. Rodriguez, understanding, handed her the armed explosives. Eva looked at the charges, then at the distant alien ship, then at the scout craft bearing down on them. They needed a distraction, something massive, something impossible. And there was only one impossible thing nearby. The scout ship swooped low, its targeting lasers painting crimson lines across Eva's chest. Miller, despite his injuries, unleashed a torrent of fire, futilely attempting to deter the alien craft. Rodriguez hunkered down, braced for impact. Eva knew their position was compromised. The charges were armed, but getting them to the command vessel was now suicide.
Unless Miller!
Rodriguez.
Take cover!
Get down! Eva yelled, her voice raw. She gripped the satchel charges, their weight familiar and heavy in her hands. There was one other option, a desperate, insane gamble. She peered over the shattered ledge, down into the chaotic melee below. The Hulk was still locked in battle, tearing through a second Leviathan-class Chitauri beast, a green storm of destruction. Its focus was entirely on the aliens. "Give me a window, Miller," Ava screamed, bracing herself. "Distract that scout!" Miller, understanding her unspoken command, focused his remaining fire on the scout ship's engines, peppering its hull with desperate shots. The alien craft wavered, its pilot momentarily distracted by the relentless, albeit ineffective, human attack. This was her chance. Ava launched herself off the building, plummeting into the chaos below. It was a controlled fall, a calculated risk. She aimed not for the ground, but for the Hulk. It was insane, a suicidal maneuver, but it was the only way to deliver the charges with enough force. The air rushed past her, the wind whipping at her face. Below, the battle raged, a maelstrom of explosions and alien roars. She timed her descent, knowing that even a slight miscalculation meant instant oblivion. She had to hit the Hulk, not just hit it, but stick the charges to it. Her boots slammed into the Hulk's massive back, the impact jarring her entire body. The monster roared, startled, its muscles tensing. Ava, using the momentum, scrambled to secure the charges. She slapped one onto its shoulder, another onto its spine, fumbling with the magnetic clips, her fingers numb with adrenaline. The Hulk bucked, its immense power threatening to throw her off like a fly. "Hold still, you magnificent bastard," she screamed, her voice lost in the din. The scout ship, having disengaged from Miller, now turned its attention to Ava, recognizing the new, unexpected threat. Its targeting lasers locked onto her. She had seconds. With a final desperate shove, the last charge clicked into place. She had armed them with a remote detonator, a tiny device now clutched in her hand. She pressed the button. Beep, beep, beep. And the charges activated, a piercing series of tones echoing the countdown to detonation. The Hulk roared, a deeper, more enraged sound, sensing the foreign objects on its back. It lunged towards the Chitauri command vessel, an unstoppable green missile. Ava, seeing her window, released her grip, kicking off the monster's back just as it made contact. The Hulk slammed into the command vessel, not just hitting it, but absorbing the impact, its brute force shaking the alien craft to its core. Ava plummeted again, narrowly missing a collapsing girder. She hit a lower rooftop, rolling, the impact stealing her breath. She looked up, the remote detonator still clenched in her hand. The Hulk was now on the Chitauri command vessel, ripping and tearing at its hull, a furious green beast embedded in the alien ship. The charges on its back were still counting down, their beeping a frantic pulse against the roar of battle. The Chitauri scrambled, trying to dislodge the monster, but it was too late. The charges detonated. A blinding flash, a deafening explosion. The Hulk, along with the Chitauri command vessel, was engulfed in a massive fireball. The alien ship groaned, its intricate hull cracking, then exploded outwards, a cascade of debris and energy. The portal above, deprived of its command structure, flickered violently. It began to shrink, twisting in on itself. The incoming Chitauri reinforcements faltered, then stalled. They were cut off. Eva, bruised and battered, struggled to her feet. The immediate threat of the portal was gone, but the cost, the Hulk. She had used it as a weapon, knowing the explosive force would likely kill it. A cold wave of guilt washed over her. Then, from the heart of the dying fireball, a shape emerged. Not intact, not unharmed, but impossibly, defiantly alive. The Hulk. It was scorched, bleeding, its skin smoking, but it was moving. It roared, a guttural sound of pain and rage, its eyes burning with an incandescent fury. It had survived, and it was looking right at her. The monster, battered but not broken, leaped from the remains of the Chitauri command ship. It had been used, tricked, and it was not happy. Its roar was a promise of vengeance. The portal was gone, the aliens were retreating, but a new, more terrifying threat had just awakened. Eva knew, with a chilling certainty, that her desperate gamble had bought them one victory, but unleashed a far greater storm. She had survived the invasion, only to face the unbridled fury of the Hulk. The Hulk, a figure of primal, unadulterated fury, burst from the dwindling smoke and debris, its massive form radiating heat and raw power. Its eyes, glowing with a malevolent green light, locked onto Eva. The city, still reeling from the alien invasion, suddenly held its breath, waiting for the monster's next move. This wasn't just anger, it was a profound, personal betrayal in the beast's simple, violent world. Eva, battered and bruised, but alive, met its gaze. A cold knot of fear tightened in her gut. She had done the impossible, saved the city, but at what cost? She had weaponized a force of nature, and now that force was coming for her. The remote detonator, still clutched in her hand, suddenly felt useless. The ground vibrated as the Hulk landed, its heavy feet pulverizing the already shattered concrete. It took a step, then another, a slow, deliberate march of vengeance. Its rage was palpable, a physical weight in the air. "Lieutenant, fall back!" Miller's voice crackled through her comm, strained and urgent. He and Rodriguez, along with the remnants of their squad, were scrambling from their precarious perch on the ruined skyscraper, already making their way down to street level. Desperate to reach her, Eva knew falling back was pointless. The Hulk was faster than she was, stronger than anything she could imagine. This wasn't a tactical retreat scenario. This was a final stand. She took a deep breath, raising her carbine, though her mind screamed at the futility of it. Bullets had proven useless. Explosives had only made it angrier. The Hulk roared, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of the city, and charged. It was a terrifying green blur, moving with impossible speed for its size. Eva braced herself, her finger tightening on the trigger, a desperate, futile gesture. Then, a dark, aerodynamic form slammed into the Hulk's chest. Not a human, not a vehicle, but a sleek, black jet, its engines blazing. Batman. The Batwing, appearing as if from nowhere, hit the monster like a battering ram, momentarily staggering it. The Hulk bellowed in surprise and rage, swiping at the jet. The Batwing, impossibly fast, evaded the blow, spiraling upwards, then unleashing a volley of sonic cannons. The high-frequency blasts hammered the Hulk, causing it to shield its eyes, its roars turning to grunts of discomfort. It wasn't enough to stop it, but it bought Eva precious seconds. "Eva, get out of there!" Batman's voice, filtered through the comm unit, was sharp, devoid of his usual controlled calm. He was pushing the limits of his tech, using a craft designed for urban warfare against a primal god. Eva didn't hesitate. She ran, her legs burning, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She sprinted towards the remnants of a fortified police barricade, praying for cover, for an advantage. The Hulk, shaking off the sonic assault, roared again, its gaze once more fixed on Eva. The Batwing swooped in for another pass, drawing the monster's attention away for a fraction of a second. But the Hulk was learning. It lunged, grabbing a chunk of masonry from a collapsed building, and hurled it with terrifying force at the jet. The Batwing banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the projectile, but the evasive maneuver left it open. The Hulk, with a mighty leap, launched itself towards the jet. It connected, its enormous hand slamming into the Batwing's wing, tearing through the advanced armor like paper. A sickening crunch of metal, a burst of sparks, and the Batwing began to spiral downwards, smoke billowing from its damaged engine. "Batman!" Eva screamed, her heart seizing. The jet plummeted, crashing into a distant street, erupting in a fiery explosion. Eva skidded to a halt, her breath catching in her throat. He was gone. The impossible factor, the dark knight who had bought them time, had fallen. The weight of despair threatened to crush her, but there was no time for despair. The Hulk was coming. Its rage had been refocused. It roared, a guttural sound of triumph, and began its relentless pursuit. Eva ran, not towards safety, but towards a strategic choke point she had spotted earlier, a narrow alleyway between two heavily damaged but still standing office buildings. It was a desperate hope, a gambit to funnel the monster, to limit its destructive reach. Miller. Rodriguez. "Fall back to Sector Delta! Secure the underpass exit! Get those civilians clear!" Eva yelled into her comm, her voice strained. She was leading the Hulk away from them, away from the last vestiges of hope. This was a one-way trip. Her squad, bruised but resolute, acknowledged the order. They knew what she was doing. They knew the sacrifice she was making. The alley was barely wide enough for a truck, and the Hulk, though massive, would have to squeeze through. It would slow it down, if only for a few crucial seconds. Eva reached the entrance looking back. The Hulk was already there, its green eyes blazing, a promise of swift, brutal death. She dove into the alley, weaving between overturned cars and shattered debris. The monster followed, its body grinding against the walls, tearing away concrete and rebar with each powerful stride. The sound was deafening, a symphony of destruction. Eva reached the end of the alley, a dead end with a collapsed retaining wall. She was trapped. She turned, carbine raised, her face a mask of grim determination. This was it, the final stand. She wouldn't die running. The Hulk emerged from the alley, tearing free from the last of the rubble, its chest heaving. It was bleeding from dozens of cuts, scorched from the Batwing's explosion, but its fury was undiminished. It saw her, a tiny speck of defiance against its overwhelming might. It raised its massive fist, ready to deliver the killing blow. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible clink. From the smoking wreckage of the Batwing, a dark figure emerged, limping, but unmistakably alive. Batman. He hadn't been in the cockpit. He had ejected at the last possible second, hidden by the explosion. He was injured, his cape torn, his armor scarred, but he was moving. He had a device in his hand, a small metallic sphere. He threw it. It landed precisely at the Hulk's feet, barely audible over the monster's guttural growl. The sphere exploded, not with destructive force, but with a blinding flash of light and a wave of pure, concentrated sonic energy. The Hulk roared, clutching its head, its massive form staggering. The sonic blast was different this time, more focused, more intense. It wasn't just disorienting, it was causing genuine pain. Its skin rippled and a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer pulsed around it. Its energy signature is fluctuating. Batman's voice cut through Eva's comm, hoarse but clear. The dimensional anomaly, the explosion, it's destabilized its core energy. It's vulnerable, vulnerable. The word echoed in Eva's mind. A flicker of hope, desperate and improbable, ignited within her. But how? How could she exploit that vulnerability? The Hulk, roaring in agony, was thrashing now, its movements uncontrolled, its raw power unleashed in a chaotic frenzy. It was tearing apart the remaining buildings around it, not with purpose, but with sheer, blinding pain. The ground beneath them began to crack, fissures spreading like spiderwebs. "Ava! The core! Its chest!" Batman yelled, his voice strained. He was moving, trying to circle the thrashing beast, but he was clearly injured. There's a power surge at its sternum. A focal point! Ava looked, really looked at the Hulk. Through the haze of smoke and dust, through the rippling green energy, she saw it. A pulsating, glowing point on its massive chest, right over its heart. The source of its power, now exposed, destabilized. But how to hit it? Even with the Hulk disoriented, getting close enough to deliver a fatal blow was suicide. Her carbine was useless. She needed something more, something with force. Her eyes scanned the immediate area, desperate, searching for an answer. Her gaze landed on the collapsed retaining wall behind her, then on the jagged, twisted rebar jutting from the concrete. It was sharp, thick, and surprisingly heavy, an impossible weapon. She grabbed one of the longer, sturdier pieces of rebar, grunting with effort. It was unwieldy, dripping with concrete dust, but she hoisted it onto her shoulder. It was a crude spear, her only chance. The Hulk let out another ear-splitting roar, its pain intensifying. It was lashing out blindly now, its green energy arcing unpredictably. Buildings crumbled around it as it struggled against the sonic assault. "Batman! Keep it focused." "Give me a window!" Ava screamed, adrenaline flooding her system. Batman, despite his injuries, understood. He fired another sonic blast, even more powerful than the last, causing the Hulk to rear back, a raw, tormented sound escaping its throat. Its green energy flared, then momentarily dimmed, as if struggling to contain itself. This was it. The moment Eva charged, not running, but a controlled, desperate sprint, fueled by the sheer will to survive. She ran towards the behemoth, the rebar spear clutched in her hands, her eyes fixed on the pulsating target on its chest. The Hulk, half blinded, half deafened, turned its head, sensing her approach. Its eyes, though clouded with pain, still burned with recognition, with fury. It swung a massive arm. Eva ducked under the blow, the wind of its passage ruffling her hair. She was close, dangerously close. The sheer heat emanating from its body was almost unbearable. She could feel the immense power radiating from it. One more step. 2. She gathered all her strength, all her desperation, and plunged the rebar spear forward, aiming for the glowing core on its chest. The steel screamed as it tore through flesh and muscle, driven by Eva's entire body weight and momentum. The rebar sank deep, puncturing the pulsating energy core. The Hulk froze. Its roar died in its throat, replaced by a choking gasp. Its eyes widened, not with rage, but with a sudden, profound shock. The green light emanating from its chest intensified, then began to flicker wildly. A wave of pure energy erupted from the wound, throwing Eva backward, searing her skin. She hit the ground hard, her ears ringing, her body aching. But she held on, watched. The Hulk staggered, a tremor running through its colossal frame. The green light pulsed faster, brighter, a self-destructive supernova. Then, with a final earth-shattering bellow of pain and power, it exploded. It wasn't a destructive explosion, not like the C4. It was a release, a burst of pure, raw gamma energy that ripped through the air, dissipating into the sky. The green light intensified to an unbearable brilliance, then imploded, sucking inward, shrinking. When the light faded, there was nothing left. No giant green monster, no smoking crater where it stood, just a faint, shimmering haze in the air and the lingering scent of ozone. The Hulk was gone. Eva lay on the ground, gasping for breath, her body screaming in protest. It was over. The impossible monster, the uncontrolled force of nature, was finally gone. A profound silence descended upon the city, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the crackle of burning debris. Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself up. Her muscles ached, her head throbbed, but she was alive. The city was saved. Batman, limping heavily, made his way to her. His cowl was askew, revealing a grim jawline, a deep cut on his temple. "Eva," he rasped, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "You did it." She looked at him, then back at the empty space where the Hulk had been. I don't know what I did," she admitted, her voice hollow. "I killed it. It was trying to kill me, but..." The guilt, momentarily pushed aside by adrenaline, returned with a vengeance. Batman placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "You saved millions of lives today, Lieutenant, including your own. It was a force beyond our control. Sometimes, hard choices are the only choices." He looked around the ruined city, his gaze heavy. "The Chitauri have retreated. Their portal is gone. The threat is over." As if on cue, the sounds of her squad, of Miller and Rodriguez, reached her. They emerged from a side street, their faces streaked with soot and relief. Other first responders, police, National Guard, medics, began to filter into the shattered zone, their calls of "all clear" echoing through the ruins. The city, though broken, was beginning to breathe again. In the days that followed, Metropolis became a testament to human resilience. The cleanup began almost immediately, a gargantuan effort involving every available resource. The story of the Green Behemoth and the alien sky demons spread like wildfire, blurring the lines between fact and nightmare. Eva Rostova, the lieutenant who had led the desperate defense, became an unsung hero. Commissioner Gordon ensured her actions were properly recognized, praising her leadership and courage in the face of impossible odds. She was commended, promoted, and offered a position heading a new rapid response meta-human threat division, a division born from the realization that the world was far stranger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. She accepted, not for glory but for purpose. The guilt of what she had done to the Hulk lingered, a cold shadow in the back of her mind. She saw its tormented eyes in her nightmares, the moment of shock as the rebar pierced its chest. But she also saw the countless faces of the civilians she had saved. The children, the families. 1 week later, as the first rays of dawn painted the scarred Metropolis skyline, Eva stood atop a temporary command post, overlooking the ongoing recovery efforts. She watched the workers, the police, the aid organizations all laboring together. The city would rebuild, it always did. A shadow fell over her. She turned. Batman. He stood silently, his form silhouetted against the rising sun, his costume repaired, his injuries unseen. The dimensional anomaly, was it truly an accident? Eva asked, the question that had plagued her since that day. Batman's gaze was fixed on the horizon. There are forces in the universe we don't understand, Lieutenant. This one was unique, a cross-dimensional incident, a being of immense gamma radiation, accidentally displaced. It lashed out because it was lost, disoriented, and scared. Scared, Eva whispered, the word feeling alien when applied to such a destructive force. Even the most powerful beings can be vulnerable, Batman replied, his voice a low rumble. What you did, it was a choice of survival. For you, and for this city. He paused, then continued, the Justice League will be back online soon. Superman, he's working on it. This incident has shown us the gaps in our defenses. We won't be caught unprepared again. Eva nodded, accepting his words, if not entirely the absolution they implied. She looked out at the city, at the endless work ahead. It was a new world, a more dangerous world, but also a world that had shown immense courage and resilience. Lieutenant, Batman said, turning to leave, the world needs more people like you. He vanished as silently as he had appeared, leaving Eva alone with the dawn. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a survivor, a protector, and a witness to the impossible. The green monster was gone, the aliens repelled, and the city, though wounded, would rise again. And Eva Rostova would be there, ready for whatever new impossible factor the universe decided to throw at them next. Her fight and humanity's had just begun.